I am joined by JP Villasmil, who's an editorial fellow at the Spectator World and a Young Voices contributor. JP, how you doing this morning?
Hey, Ari, I'm doing great. I
All
woke
right.
up.
That's good. That's good. I am glad that happened. I'm sure you are too. And we're here meeting. Kind of. I mean, earlier in the morning for me. We're in different time zones and everything, but I'm glad you're able to make it work today. So we've got a situation going on right now in the country with all these protests popping up around different college campuses around the entire country, and a lot of them are getting shut down. Some of the protesters are getting arrested. You've got a piece published by The Hill where you're talking about free speech and how maybe these protests shouldn't be getting shut down like they are. Why don't you explain that to everyone?
So the piece that I wrote was, I think, the day before or 2 days before the Columbia protests started, and then they got shut down that first time, which I predicted was gonna make things worse.
Mm.
And here we are now, a nationwide movement. So basically, what I argue in the piece is that there is a principle of free expression that goes back generations. And even if the legality is more complicated, conservatives have usually stood up for the principle. By this, I mean, when a private corporation says, we're not going to allow uh, conservatives to be hired, or when a private university goes, we don't want Ben Shapiro to come to college, or when any particular group in this country says, we're going to do X to shut down the speech of Y, conservatives usually come forward and say, hey, free expression, free association is about allowing strong factions to be there, to be present in public, and therefore to avoid those factions from becoming conspirators, which is exactly what Alexis de Tocqueville talked when he referred to free association as the mother science of the American population. So that's basically the main argument I made.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I mean, we all remember times throughout the last few years where conservatives were getting shut down on campus. We remember, even if you get outside of campuses, things like anti-lockdown protests, or people being anti-vax and wanting to protest, or maybe an anti-trans ideology whatever protest it is that people on the right might be having, and being upset that people are saying that they're hateful or they're putting people in danger, and therefore they should be shut down. And so I guess my first question is, do you think conservatives, now I don't know your political ideology, you could let us know if you wanted to, do you think conservatives actually care about free speech, or they care about their ideas having free speech?
So I think we're in a very politically tense time where every time someone does talk about principles, it's usually not in the most principled of ways. And let me explain what I mean by this. Is that, of course, we all know what those guiding principles in the Constitution are. Like, everyone who's in Congress, who went to an elite university, who went to law school, knows very well what free expression is, for example. But when it comes to partisan politics, things have gotten so ugly, and they've been ugly before, that the people who know what the principles actually mean uh, are okay bastardizing them, or just mocking them, saying that they're doing X in the name of principle, but really they're just doing completely the opposite. So a lot of conservatives in Congress, right, um, and a lot of people in society in general nowadays have particular foreign policy views, particular views on, religion, morality, and if the free expression of those who oppose them is shut down, they just look away, and that's wrong. And for most of it, for like the last like 10, 20 years, conservatives have fixated on the speech that's being attacked, that's on the right. Like, of course, that makes sense because we haven't had such a massive protest be silenced or attempted to be silenced in a way. Because with the BLM protest, nothing happened really. Like, you didn't see universities taking steps like this one. You saw police come and be like, "Hey guys, like, don't destroy private property," which is different.
So when it comes to the private property argument, just so you know, where I guess where I come down, I'm a libertarian, very strong philosophical libertarian, and what I do protect utmost is property rights, or that's what I argue for the protection of. And so when it comes to these protests, I have this very both sides view, honestly, where I see people like Greg Abbott. I know your piece was written, before this even happened at all the other campuses and everything, so we can talk about these things too. But see Greg Abbott, governor in Texas, saying that anti-Semitic speech, hate speech, shouldn't be allowed. These protesters should be arrested. They should be expelled. Doesn't say anything about what the campus rules are, whether or not they violated. Maybe there's a rule that the students signed up for that says you can't camp on these grounds, or that you can't litter, you can't use a megaphone or something. I don't know, whatever the rules of the campus might be. I don't see any of the argument coming from that side, the property rights side. And now Columbia maybe has a better argument because they're a private university, and so they have a better private property rights argument to make. But I don't even see that argument being made. I see the argument being made that this is hate speech and that we can't allow this kind of speech to exist. That really gets at me, because to me it's getting around the only valid argument that you could be making if you wanted to shut these down. This is not your property. In Columbia's case, this is our property. This is private property. I don't care what it is that you're saying. You can't. We've decided that we don't want this to happen here, and this is our property, not yours. And therefore, you could make that argument. But no one's making that argument. It's all on the grounds that this is anti-Semitic hate speech, and we can't allow it to happen. What do you think about that?
No, I think that there's a really interesting friction here that has created a lot of debate between, of course, private property rights and the principle of free expression. I'm glad that you understand what the argument that I try to make in the article, because I talked to another guy 2 days ago, and I think he assumed that I didn't care about private property rights at all. And he's like, the university can do whatever they want. Who do you think you are? And in part, like, I agree, like, Columbia University could technically change the rules. Well, there's another question. There's contractual obligations between the students and the university. But aside from that, Columbia University could technically be like, we just don't want protests. We don't care what they're about. Get out of here. And that's, technically speaking, that's legal. That's okay. And in this specific case, they provided warnings beforehand to the students, and they said, the private university said, hey, get out of here. Get out of our backyard, our quad. I don't know what they call them there, our lawn. And the students did not leave, and then they warned them again. They issued, the warnings, which is like, again, what they're supposed to do. They refused to, so now they're trespassing. So, okay, guys, legality-wise, Columbia University is the right place. But the problem that I continue to face when I talk to a lot of my peers on the right, just like broadly speaking, and also some of the moderates, classical liberals, and so on, is that many of them are fixating on property rights and talking about how private institutions can do just whatever they want. And when I hear that, I say, okay, you might have a point, but there's a cultural and institutional precedent of safetyism that can originate from private institutions or from, I don't know, celebrities, and you should still protest it. For example, if I don't know, if like anyone is making a communist argument, right? They have the right to do it, but maybe libertarians should be saying like, hey, we don't like when you say that. When a university says that they're shutting down speech because there's an intimidating environment and they want to avoid what's been seen in other universities, people should stop for a second and say like, hey, you can send police force, maybe you can take the tents down. You should definitely arrest the violent people, but this intimidating environment language can be used to shut down lots of heterodox, diverse, different speech. So I had a problem with that, and I think most people should have a problem with that because, yes, it's a private university, but historically, all universities have been spaces for protest, have been spaces for free expression, free association. And if you're really going to make the argument, some people make this argument like, universities can just tell them to like go out, and they should do that. And you don't have a problem with that logic of like universities just like, they can just kick out whoever they want. You don't have a problem with them acting on it and kicking out whoever they want. I have a problem with you.
I understand the argument with I agree with the argument on the safetyism for sure. Like the idea that, well, what you're saying in this protest makes people uncomfortable, or it makes me feel like I'm not as safe. And like you said, like if there are actual safety concerns, like legitimate safety concerns with people, those should always be addressed. And I do agree that this is sort of a hypocritical application of property rights at this time, which is why it's always an issue. Like you go to the property rights argument when it's something that you don't like, and then you don't use it when it's something that maybe you do agree with. And do you think that that's what Colombia is doing in this instance? Do you think it's purely because it's an anti I don't even want to say see, I don't even buy into all of the words that people say about the protesters and stuff. Do you think that they're doing the property rights argument because it's a pro-Palestine protest, or do they make that same argument anytime there's another protest, when people are protesting let me go back 10 years in favor of gay marriage or whatever it is? Have they always done this?
It's complicated to tell because if you look at it first philosophically, ideologically, let's say, a lot of the university administrators agree with the protesters. They see Israel as an extension of the West, and they believe in a broader decolonization project. And, I went to a very liberal university, not Columbia, and I met a lot of professors and administrators, and ideologically speaking, they're not that distinct from the protesters. Maybe they have a difference on approach and so on, and they're actually tied to the university and they don't want to lose their jobs. But first, there's that. But I think, second, and most importantly, I think there's a significant chunk of students and donors that are dissatisfied with the protest. So, objectively speaking, when it comes to a protest of this nature, right, the university, optically speaking, would probably benefit from just not having it. It's better to like not have the protest at all, right? Why? Because you don't anger some donors, some students, and so on. But when you had like the BLM protests, there were like a lot of like white donors, I guess, being like, "We're not going to give you money if this continues," And were there like, I guess, were there like gay marriage protests? I don't think there were like a lot of like evangelical Christians being like, "Hey, Columbia University, we're not going to give you money if you allow this to happen." And again, like making this case might be, somewhat controversial. It shouldn't be. The reality is that universities are self-interested, like individuals are, and I think the decision doesn't come out of principle. I don't think Columbia University hates anti-Semitic. I think probably like some of the administrators are probably anti-Semitic themselves. They're just doing this because, yeah,
They want to protect.
money.
They want to protect their business, so they can continue to make money off their business.
Which is understandable, but they're not going to say that out loud.
No, of course not. Why do you think? You said earlier that you did this article a couple days before this whole thing really blew up. Why did you think that shutting down the Columbia protests was going to lead to a more widespread movement afterwards?
So I just saw the pictures, and I don't know, maybe I have maybe I just understand the imagery so well, but like when I saw those pictures and I saw those students and those stories about like 100 students being arrested, I said, this story is just perfect to like throw around at universities and be like, look what's happening at Columbia. We need to unite now and battle this. Like when there's a protest of this, and remember, like people forget about this. The protest started when President Shafiq of Columbia University was testifying in Congress. And that day was when they set up the encampment. And the day after was when the police was sent, actually, from what I understand. So this wasn't like, it wasn't a riot. It wasn't like terrorism like some people are claiming. I saw some Columbia University professor saying, these people are terrorists because if they support terrorism abstractly and in another country, they are actual terrorists. And I'm like, okay, guys, like this is a protest that lasted one day. They were saying really, really messed up things. I agree with that. They were saying actual anti-Semitic stuff, like, like kill the Jews and things like that, which are obviously wrong, not illegal. Abstract calls for violence, not illegal. They might be against the university policies, which I agree with. Like, when I saw what was happening, I'm like, maybe Columbia University should go up to the students and be like, we're going to expel you guys. You're not going to have your fancy Ivy League degree. Haha. Keep protesting. Say bye-bye to university. That would probably work much better. Maybe there's like a civil rights law issue there, which is the other thing. I don't want to dive too much into it, but I parentheses, I think it's funny how like all these conservatives are like talking about how civil rights law, Title VII, Title X, they're using civil rights law in this case, but every time it's been used in the past, they're like, this is unacceptable, free speech. But anyways, back to the point. When I saw those images, it just made sense. Like, you just don't arrest 100 students in any situation unless it's like unless there's actual violence, and expect it to not cause a reaction. Students were all like singing and like dancing, weird dances. Just search on Twitter. Like, these people are not terrorists. They're weird. Many of them are rich. They come from like privileged backgrounds. They've been professional victims their whole lives. I don't think they're gonna blow up anything yet. Yeah, so we should just let them be there. Send the police. Yeah, the police has to be nearby, sure, but even if the university is private, I disagree with their actions. I think they could have been like, take down the tents, guys, protest over there. If you don't protest over there, we're gonna move you. But if you arrest 100 people, what do you think is going to happen? Like, come on.
I feel like a very simple solution for the university would just be, hey, if you don't show up to class, you're going to get a 0 every day that you're not in class, and then you're going to fail this class because you're not here every day, and then you just wasted all of your money. And if you want to graduate, you're going to have to pay us even more money to come back. And so that would have been, you don't even have to really talk to them about that. You don't even have to really threaten them with expulsion or anything. Just be like, hey, you're going to fail because you're not here right now, and we're doing stuff in class. And so it's up to you. You make this decision. Probably a lot of people are going to decide that they have to go to class when they're told that. That might have been an easier way to do this. Man, I just feel like this is a situation where we've gone a long time without consistent principles, or at least principles being applied consistently in every single situation. And this is where what happens when no one has a moral leg to stand on in any of the arguments, because like you said, well, conservatives arguing against this protest, well, they're also arguing against colleges shutting down conservatives coming on and speaking about things that many of the students don't want people to speak about on campus, and making them feel unsafe because of the things that are being said. So they don't have principle leg to stand on. Also, the people that are protesting would probably also say that those conservatives shouldn't be allowed to come to campus and hold their events at the same time. Like, even these people that are arguing First Amendment free speech rights would then turn around and say that Ben Shapiro shouldn't be allowed to come on campus and speak, or that there shouldn't be a conservative group, Young Americans for Liberty, or whatever the group is, that wants to hold their event on campus because it makes people feel unsafe. And so there's no principles there. The college doesn't apply it evenly. They pick and choose whichever one they think is going to hurt their bottom line the most. And so what are we all supposed to do here? We're all arguing back and forth, side to side, and we're all right. All of us are right the whole time, except for people that are actually causing some kind of violence and taking away other people's freedoms or liberties. Of course, they're not right. But every argument that each side is making is correct, depending on what time and place you exist in. And that's it. And so what do we expect to happen?
I heard what you just said. I think it's really interesting when you think about it, because it is true that the First Amendment, like the last 10 years, the right never had to really think about it too deeply, because they never had the, how would I call this? Like, they never had a situation, a beautiful situation where they can see themselves going in and shutting down the speech. Like, they never had a situation where they would feel so good seeing those students arrested. Maybe I'm being a little exaggerated here, but in the past, it's always been kind of like our folks, our people, or even if it's not our people that we don't really like care about that much, like a black nationalist or a white supremacist. Like the average normie conservative looks at that and they're like, okay, these people are bad or whatever. The pro-Palestinian protesters, you know, when a lot of my conservative peers saw that, they went, oof, this is too good not to shut down. So
it's our time to shine. Finally.
Yeah. And in the past, maybe the last time we saw that, maybe that was like one of those wars like Vietnam.
Probably Vietnam, yeah.
Yeah. Conservatives back then probably were really excited to shut that down. So yeah, in the last 20 years, we haven't had something like this. Again, there were the BLM protests, but I do think they're starkly different, because a lot of conservatives were like, okay with the protests, but not the riots. And we haven't seen riots yet. The moment there's a riot, I'm gonna jump back in the ring with all the conservatives, and I'm gonna be like, shut it down, arrest them all. But it's not a riot yet.
Arrest these terrorists.
Yeah. I'll call them terrorists down when they destroy Wendy's. If they touch another Wendy's, they're terrorists in my book. But yeah, I do think it's interesting to think about this kind of like a game theory way, because that's what politics is like. And I say this, I try to look at myself as a strategist most of the time. Like, there's not really a lot of principles. Okay, I sound like a psychopath right now. Sound really Machiavellian, but there are not a lot of principles that I would like go out there and like be like, principle. Like, sometimes I think about strategy. I'm like, hey, how do we win? I understand what Biden's doing because he's doing this to win. I understand what Trump's doing because he wants to win. But when it comes to free speech, it's one of those things where I refrain completely from this mentality. Because, yeah, like maybe conservatives have an argument for like, we need to shut down this speech because it looks really badly and it's going to affect the foreign policy decision. So game theory wise, maybe there's an argument for why this needs to be shut down now. But when it comes to free speech, literally the First Amendment, the principle of principles in America, without speech, there's really no thought. And this is an argument that has been made in the past. Like, the reason why free speech exists in the first place, not because like saying whatever you want is cool and nice. It's because if you don't exchange thoughts, if there's even if ideas are not aggressively expressed in the public sphere, then things get really ugly with time. Mm-hmm. And I think that the last sentence in my article is something like, even if the liberals have looked away, have not joined the mob when the free speech of people on the right has been attacked. This is not just about liberals versus conservatives, like defending free speech, free expression, free association. It is our duty as Americans. I don't like when people are like, as Americans we should X, as Americans we should do what. When it comes to free expression, though, yes, as Americans, we should stand for it.
I happen to agree, and of course we both agree. Stay nonviolent. Don't hurt anyone. Don't take people's stuff. Don't take away other people's liberties. You know that. But the First Amendment is first for a reason. If you can't speak, you can't protect the rest of your rights, and you can't speak out against the people that are taking your rights. And so it's very important. So JP, where can people go to find more of your stuff and to keep up with all the new articles and stuff that you've got coming out?
So I got an X or Twitter. It's real, JP, Villasmil. And then my Instagram is same, but without the real, JP Villasmil. I had to use the real because someone stole my username. But go check it out. I'm trying to grow a bit more on X, Twitter, whatever, because I joined the party a bit late. But I'm posting some cool stuff. So, yeah.
All right. I'm going to put those links in the show notes for everyone. JP, thank you so much for coming on and with short notice, too. It was a great conversation. Really enjoyed it. And I'd love to have you come back on again sometime and talk about whatever else it is you're writing about.
Thank you very much, Nate.